After beating the Sage Lord, I have Alir accelerate his bond with Ike, getting it to level 15 and seeing their C and B bond, as I plan on pairing them together because of where the next paralogue takes place. We also go through the B bonds for Roy and Alir, Sigurd and Louis, Erica and Merrin, Lucina and Seedal, and we also check up the C bond between Lynn and Tamara before heading to the supports. The Meat Complaint trilogy ends as Seedal apologizes for his lack of self-control, though this time Tamara purposefully lured him in to try and make him happy. It would indeed do so, and after a bit more fighting over his reluctance, Seedal is finally convinced and indulges himself in the feast. Kagetsu divines what their dinner will be, and Ivy points out his uncanny ability to predict the mundane with 100% accuracy, and she dislikes that about him. Kagetsu is saddened by the sentiment, but recovers quickly as the feeling isn't mutual, and Ivy finds that strange in a good way. Finally, with Louis being our first character to hit the level cap, I have him change classes to the Great Knight class to give him some extra mobility, without sacrificing his bulk. We then engrave a few weapons, namely the Flashing Fist Dart with the Dawn Emblem to help Seedal's avoid, making him a viable dodge tank, and then Ivy's Elf Thunder is presented the Sacred Emblem to help her hit rate. And finally, we make our way to the next paralogue. Arriving at a castle in Illusia, Micaiah is reminded of Castle Nox, where she fought a losing battle against Ike, as to not trigger a blood pact that her people were bound to. Alir then asks to be taught how to stand against such despair and fear, on this absurdly bland recreation of Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn's Chapter 313, taking Micaiah's role but somewhat worse off, as we're missing valuable ally units to use the Ballistae with, or the ledges we could have made near impenetrable choke points. Though there are some positives, like the area we need to defend only being one tile, and the fact Alir is not bound to the upper portion of the map. Micaiah takes on Ike's role, leading a fabrication of the Laguz Alliance army, and is accompanied by a thief with a few revival stones, representing her husband Soth. As for our preparations, I equip Roy onto Panette, Leaf onto Fogado, and I temporarily put Mist S onto Clan. With the numerous cavalries, I provide Louis with a pole axe and Tamara with a rider's bane. Everyone is put into position, and then we begin this battle against the Dawn Maiden. The first few turns are spent getting everyone to the southern choke points. Turn 1 has Lyndon initiate the firewall protocol, as this is enough to redirect the enemy traffic to the sides. Merrin and an engaged Louis are the first ones to body block what they can, and then we're on to turn 2. Panette and Merrin seal off the east side, with the clan Alcris and Ivy providing support where necessary. For the west side, I intentionally invite the enemies in, with Alir engaging and setting up Great Ether, with most of the units there aside from Louis staying out of the enemy attack ranges, and we pull back because of a singular Sage that can easily shred through our initial defense, which manages to reach Louis anyway and blow him up. This time around, I have Alir fully block the 1-tile choke point, while Louis deals some enemy phase damage around the 2-tile choke point, outside of the Sage's range this time. Micaiah starts getting numerous reinforcements each turn from this point, and then turn 3 begins, with Alir getting a few decent hits with Great Ether. Then both he and Tamara work together to remove some of the cavalries that leaked. Jean finally makes his arrival, and I have him plug the gap at the 2-tile choke point with Obstruct, so Louis can focus on removing the last unit in our zone of control, and Fogado can take out the Sage I was most worried about. Not much is different on the east side, though I have Panette launch Blazing Lion to hinder the enemy some more. The west side leak a few more enemies, but not as much as before, and this remains the status quo for the next few turns. We still have a few mishaps along the way, such as on turn 4 where Panette died because she killed too many enemies, and thus took too many hits, which I rectified by having her equip a bow to keep her from counterattacking. A few attacks into turn 5, and I start getting flashbacks of the Ike paralogue, and I did not want a repeat of that reinforcement scenario, so while maintaining the same defense, Tamara with Seedal's help makes it to the central path where she conveniently has enough range to aggro Micaiah with Astra Storm. Turn 6 is when we release the Flame Gate, luring Micaiah in some more with Temera's illusions, and having everyone start to converge in the middle path, with Alir, Louis, and Merrin doing their best to fend off their pursuers before our entry into the final turn, where Fabrication Soth hasn't moved once despite the fact his wife is about to be destroyed. Lyndon starts us off by engaging and breaking Micaiah's first revival stone with Torrential Roar. An override from Louis and a crit from Alir break the second stone. Then finally, just because I can, Fogado quadruple hits Micaiah, and I try to get as many of our allies bundled up so almost everyone can join in the final strike with All for One.
I challenge my fate. Take that!
If I may. Come on!
Me too! Incoming! One more! You're a tough one! Not yet.
So strong.
Micaiah congratulates us on a job well done, and Alir is disappointed that he couldn't get some of Micaiah's fortune-telling abilities, which he really doesn't need because of the Draconic Time Crystal. Alir is honoured by Micaiah's praise, and then the two continue their journey. And with that, our max bond level is unlocked with Micaiah. Back onto the Somniel, we engrave the Bravelant with the Genealogy Emblem and Lyndon's Thoron Tome with the Binding Emblem. Then we travel to the last Paralogue currently available. Arriving, the location reminds Roy of a grueling battle he fought against the Kingdom of Burn's armies and their commander, an important time in his life, and then he requests us to battle him on this upcoming map. And just like with Genealogy and Thracia, Binding Blade is the last of the mainline Fire Emblem games I'm not too familiar with. And as a side note, this map was quite fun for me because the situations I landed myself in felt like mini puzzles. We start off at the top left corner of the map, and must traverse around the mountain ranges dealing with the enemy army, which is mostly comprised of Wyvern Knights, before confronting Roy at the Broken Temple on the opposite corner, protected by a few generals and sages. With the emblem rings, I put Leaf back onto Panette, Clan takes back Micaiah, and I give Fogado Sharina S. Because of the numerous Wyverns, I temporarily give Merrin our Wormslayer, we set everyone into these positions, and then start the battle, where we must defeat the young lion. For turn 1, I split the army up as follows. Merrin, Alir, Alchrist, Jean, Temera, and Clan go eastward, while Ivy, Lyndon, who also pops down some flames, Panette, Fogado, Louis, and Seadoll go south. The east team pull in the first of the Wyvern Knight squadrons, and bafflingly, they had more reliable hit rates against Merrin than I anticipated, and we'll get to why in a bit, as Alir hears more Wyvern Knight reinforcements coming soon. Now, as for those hit rates, all the Wyvern Knights on this map have the Certain Blow skill, meaning I can't as effectively dodge them. Combine that with their Air Raid class skill, and they have a certain death combination if I position our squishier, slower grounded units poorly. For now, with turn 2, the East team have just enough firepower to get rid of the first Wyvern squadron. The South team on the other hand have Fogado one-round both Wyvern Knights in their path, while Panette and Louis crush the Sages. Ivy starts luring in the enemies in the middle, while Lyndon lays down the red carpet, causing the enemies there to spread a bit before Wyvern Knight reinforcements from the southwest and northeast corners fly in. Turn 3, the East team march on with Clan and Merrin at the forefront because of the enemy sages. The South team at minimum take down the nearby snipers, with Louis set to intercept the Wyvern Knights. Both Clan and Merrin get hurt badly, but at least 2 of the sages get deleted. And from here until the teams merge, I'm gonna explain the actions of one team at a time, as this is the point where I started enjoying the map, and it will be easier to keep up this way. First, the East team's turn 4. 6 units, 5 enemies, leaving any of the enemy alive and someone is likely going to die, and that's the general sentiment I had with this group's progress. Starting off, Alcris snipes the Wyvern Knight straight ahead of him. Alir charges and slays the Sage, Clan follows and one rounds another Wyvern, Merrin switches to Ephraim for Solar Brace healing and gets a lucky crit, and Temera eliminates the last one with Astra Storm, thanks to Sandstorm activating twice, letting Jean use his move to treat Clan. With turn 5, this team has another set of 5 enemies to deal with. Ideally, I'd want to get rid of the Sage and Snipers since they can shoot the backline, but that's just not feasible unless I use Goddess Dance now, but I'm saving that as my emergency panic button. So for now, I have Merrin in the woods to weaken the Sniper. Alir moves down in front of the Sage to engage and sets up Great Ether. Then Clan retreats, engages, and uses Great Sacrifice to fully heal everyone. Jean heals him, and to block off the enemy some more, Temera brings out her illusions. Though this does have the unfortunate side effect of the indirect enemies walking out of Great Ether's range. The southeastern Wyvern Knight squadrons start moving to our location, and then we get surrounded by even more reinforcements from the northwest and direct east, putting us in quite a conundrum. Turn 6, Great Ether slams on the generals, Clan moves out to remove the weakened Sniper, Alir deals with the Sage, Merrin takes out one of the weakened generals, and Temera dispels her doubles, as now is when I want to use our Goddess Dance panic button. Clan heads back into the woods to the left to take out the remaining general, and keeping him there as he's one of the few characters I have that's fast enough to not get doubled with the Wyvern Knight's air raid skill, just like Alcris who moves next to him. Then Merrin moves above Alcris to mitigate the attacks on him, while also switching back to Erica. Temera deploys the illusions closer to the eastern Wyverns, and finally, Alir weakens the remaining Sniper. Poof go the illusions, and both Clan and Temera get some much needed critical eliminations on the enemy phase, giving us a bit more breathing room for turn 7. I have Alcris try to get out of harm's way by retreating and failing to defeat the Wyvern Knights near him, so Clan finishes it off instead. Temera moves next to Merrin and chugs an elixir. Then Alir moves diagonally to the left of her, so the two cover Jean as much as they can. Unfortunately, Alcris was still in danger and he gets struck with a spear, while another Wyvern gets around our flimsy enclosure to raid Jean's life. Back to the drawing board on this next timeline. Where Alir takes out the Sniper, Jean pulls back out to hurt the Wyvern Knights near Alcris, while also staying away from the mountain to not get air raided. Temera covers Jean south, while Merrin covers his north, while also engaging, primarily for Alcris as he benefits from the Eclipse Brace, allowing him to heal a bit while also getting rid of the Wyvern Knight in our rear. And finally, Clan escapes the enemy attack ranges to heal Jean. And miraculously, Jean is able to dodge the spear wielder I completely forgot about, allowing him to tank the next hit, forcing Temera and Merrin into a bloody melee against the remaining Wyverns, all surviving the onslaught into turn 8, with the Phantom Worm approaching menacingly. Thankfully, the Wyvern Knights got weakened enough that we can take them all out, whilst everyone aside from Alir stay out of the Worm's range, where finally, Merrin and Clan take it out on turn 9. Now it's time to talk about how we tackled the South team's problems. So back we go to their turn 4, where the overall firepower of this group is slightly less than the other, but they have Seadal to make up for it as Fogado is the only unit down here who can reliably one-round the Wyvern Knights. And we make good use of that immediately by having him shoot down the two in the south. Annette one-shots another by winning a 50-50 critical hit. And as we're lacking the means to take out both the nearby general and currently remaining Wyvern Knight, I opt to have Lyndon engage to freeze the two thanks to Dreadful Aura. And then Ivy finishes off the general while Louis dishes out some enemy phase damage. Turn 5, down go the 3 remaining foes and Ivy starts luring in 3 sword cavalries in the south, as well as the southern Wyvern Knight squadron. And the reinforcements these guys will deal with arrive smack bang into the middle of this group, as well as a bit to the north. Turn 6, I had a feeling I bit more than I could chew. However, that does not stop me from trying to get Penitent Ivy out of their predicament. Instead of retreating, I have Fogado open a path through the middle. Lyndon uses Dreadful Aura to freeze both the Wyvern to the left, as well as the cavalries to the southwest. Ivy finishes off the last nearby Wyvern that can still move, and then we cover Fogado's sides to try and distribute the oncoming damage. And that fails miserably as I didn't account for the fact that one of the Wyvern Knights had a tomahawk, so Ivy gets 2 shot, while Fogado falls soon after to a critical hit. So Fogado starts almost the same way on this next timeline, but this time we try to pull back. Lyndon freezes the Wyvern Knight in the forest, while Panette runs to the rear to crit one of the reinforcements there, allowing for Fogado and Louis to comfortably get rid of the remaining uncomfortably close Wyvern Knights. Louis only takes the southeastern Wyvern's attacks, while surprisingly, Fogado gets struck on the backline instead of Seedall, who I was sure was in one-shot range, but I'll count my blessings as this gets us to turn 7. First, Ivy heals Fogado so he can safely take out the Wyvern Knight wielding the Tomahawk, as well as its fellow knight to the right, as we start making a safe zone whilst simultaneously progressing to the group merge. Panette and Louis finish off the last Wyvern Knight to the north, and then Lyndon finishes with our favourite Vein of Flames. Unfortunately, I positioned him poorly as he was still in range of one of the remaining Wyvern Knights. So here we are, starting the turn again because I did the East team's actions first, immediately getting Fogado killed with a crit. We try again to make the same safe zone setup, of course in a different order to alter the RNG. The key differences now are Fogado dodging the Tomahawk retaliation, as well as Lyndon setting up the Vein of Flames whilst hiding behind Panette, resulting in only Fogado getting struck. Turn 8. Immediately, Fogado bids good riddance to the last 2 Wyvern Knights, whilst Lyndon lays down more fire, and everyone else enjoys the new purple free zone. And finally, with turn 9, those pesky cavalries are eradicated with an override, an axe to the face, and an elf thunder. Whew! 6 enemies to go. Thankfully, Roy is passive until we aggro him first, so we spend the next few turns merging and preparing both groups, as well as picking up the Emblem energy tiles along the way. And eventually, we're set up to start baiting the enemy on turn 12 with Tamara's illusions, which triggers more Wyvern Knight reinforcements to the north, west, and east, and despite that, I focus on taking down Roy. Turn 13, Merrin takes out the Thor on stages while Louis starts poking at Roy, which also puts him in danger as he can get doubled by the Sage with Meteor. So the moves I do are risky attacks to get rid of them, only to get Alquist killed in return. On the next timeline, I don't even try. Tamara dispels her illusions, and then we goddess Dancelier, Tamara, Clan, and Alquist, thinking that summoning out a fresh set of illusions can offset the meteors. It does not, so down goes Louis. And at this point, you'd think I'd have learned that if the enemy can take out a player unit, then they'd prioritize them over the illusions, based on my Leap Paralogue experience, but I did not. We go back to after the goddess dance, and this time have Ivy access the convoy to pull out a silence staff, and she successfully shuts down the meteors for the turn, allowing Tamara to call doubles a bit deeper in. Then I have Clan obstruct a tile down, and to the left of Louis to limit where Roy can strike with Blazing Lion. And, since the last Sage can't Meteor, I have Alquist attack and he gets rid of them in 2 longbow Lunar shots. Roy unleashes Blazing Lion on Louis, and then we enter the final turn. Louis and Alir take out Roy's first Revival Stone, Merrin, Alquist and Ivy take out the second. Alquist then triggers holdout+++ on Roy's last HP bar, before we finish him off with Astra Storm.
Now I have you! Here goes!
Concede.
Roy thanks us for the entertaining struggle we put against his Wyvern Knight horde, and Alir sums up the sentiment I had dealing with them. Roy's then reminds of a demon dragon named Idun he once knew, who also had heterochromia and a similar bearing to Alir, where he had a choice on whether to kill or save her. And that's where Roy stops, as he at least has the courtesy of not spoiling his story, unlike a certain holy knight. But he at least promises to tell Alir his story at the end of their adventure. And with that, our Max Bonds level is unlocked with Roy.